Hey, oozes and bunnies. This is a preview of the most recent Party Planning, an extra podcast that the Join the Party crew makes for our Patreon. If you want to listen to the whole thing, go to patreon.com/jointhepartypod. Check out this preview.
Thank you, lady.
The first thing I thought of was, like, we're recording a video for our child in case of our death.
Our child, Kirby.
Our child, Kirby. Hey, Kirby. This is your dad, Eric, and your mom, Amanda.
We love you very much.
We love you very much. If you're watching this, we were killed by covert agents.
The passwords are under the pillow.
That's how I felt we're recording. This is like Batman being like, I'm dead. You kids need to take over. I'm sorry. It was the Riddler.
Well, it's also because, like, shit's unfolding around us as we speak. And we're like, okay, we'll record this on Thursday afternoon. But, like, by the time you're listening to this on Friday morning,
something might be different.
24 hours from now, something might be different. So I understand why that was your reference.
Yeah. I just was looking at ourselves and I'm like, oh, this is a will. We're doing a will. Okay. So this is a overview of what is going on in Dungeons and Dragons regarding the open gaming license. We're dividing this into three parts. The first being Amanda's going to kind of lay out the finances of Hasbro, the parent company of Wizard of the Coast, and Wizard of the Coast itself as a subsidiary. Now it's in the company.
Former subsidiary.
The former subsidiary. Basically, if you don't know, if we're going all the way back, Wizard of the Coast bought Dungeons and Dragons from TSR, the company that was like in Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
They came up with Dungeons and Dragons that Gary Gygax founded and ran into the ground. So that's that whole thing. The second is we're going to talk about the big kerfuffle, and then we're going to talk. The third is the fallout from that, and where we're at now in terms of what the in terms of where we're at with the open gaming license and how this is going to affect people going forward, including us. Yeah, because we're going to touch on how this affects all the people in kind of like the community around Dungeons and Dragons. It's
important to say, Join the Party, the podcast is in no danger, and we're totally fine. And we are, because of my secret finance background and Eric's, intense knowledge of magic and wizards and like all of those things, and following the story, like, we're in no danger of going anywhere. So don't be worried. But it's a thing that affects a lot of the industry, and it's a thing on everybody's minds. And there are tons of peers and fans and other creators that are talking about this. And so if you've either seen it on social media and been like, or feel like you need a finance degree to understand why any of this is happening, or a law degree, that's by design. They want it to be confusing and be like, policies, but it's not. And we have a lot of information from spending the last month, basically since like Christmas, following this essentially full time. So that's what we're here to do. We're
touching on some stuff that Amanda and I did on Games and Feelings right before the turn of the year.
Yes.
Where we talked about what is Hasbro doing. This was all the stuff in December, and this is the lead up to that. So we're touching on some of this stuff, but we're going to get into it. Like we're doing more and different stuff than we were on the Games and Feelings episode. And we're going to define all this stuff as we go through. Also, I resent myself for calling it a kerfuffle. The open gaming license is draconian and fucking stupid, and it's a disaster.
It's a corporate disaster for Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro.
Exactly.
It could have been a disaster for creators, but communities are good at mobilizing, and people mobilized against it and said, not on our watch.
Exactly.
So, D&D, as of a couple hours ago, essentially fully rolled back and been like, whoa.
They said in a PR. Okay, we're gonna touch on the future and things that will come out after this video is recorded, probably at the end of this video.
And if you normally listen to this via audio in your podcast app, we are going to make the video available to all levels of patrons. So we're going to be screen sharing some articles and kind of walking through, the timeline of this in screen share. So it's not required. If you're just listening, that's fine. But if you haven't watched video versions of Party Planning before, or you want to follow along as we screen share, go ahead. You can go to Patreon or check your email, Noti, and you can get the video version.
That's right. You'll see the audio version will go to your podcatcher as usual, but you can go on to Patreon and check out the screen share. All right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start the screen sharing. Okay.
Let's do it.
All right. So we're going to start with part 1, which is Hasbro is a corporation.
See, now I feel like we're
Is that
making
a
a
good
90-minute
title?
video, like YouTube video feature. But yes, no, it's a good title.
Sure. We're going to talk about Fast Pass after this, but first we're going to talk about this. Okay.
Kevin Perjurer.
Kevin a perjurer. All right. So the first chapter 1, Hasbro is a corporation.
Yes.
Okay. So let's go back. We can go back all the way back. TSR was bought by Wizards of the Coast back in 1999.
That was bought by Wizards.
Oh no, that was earlier.
Yeah.
Sorry,
like
that was
the 70s
earlier
or
than that.
something, Yeah.
They made a lot of failures in the 70s and 80s and got bought by Wizards of the Coast at some point, where they were like just like a cool, flashy Seattle-based game that made Magic the Gathering.
Exactly.
So you have to remember, so Magic the Gathering was invented by someone who worked at Wizard of the Coast. Dungeons and Dragons was invented by Gary Gygax, and he started a company called TSR, which stands for something I can't remember, out of Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, and then it was bought by the Wizards, bought them because the company was in shambles.
Yeah.
In 1999, Hasbro bought Wizards of the Coast.
Hasbro, huge gaming manufacturer, one of the industry leaders in making toys, My Little Pony, board games, Monopoly, like all of the shit. And they're a publicly traded company. So unlike Wizards of the Coast, which was not a publicly traded company at the time, we have lots of access to like financial documents and public statements and things that Hasbro says and has to say and report about their assets, which now, since they bought it in 99, include the company Wizards of the Coast, which for 22 years until 2021, they ran as a subsidiary, meaning Wizards was its own company, its own legal entity. People got paychecks from Wizards, but in 2021, Hasbro reorganized a bunch of stuff and basically doubled down on their investment, which they bought Wizards for like $300 million plus in 99. And then they, in 2021, doubled down and said, no, Wizards of the Coast is now like an imprint of Hasbro. It's a division of Hasbro. And so Wizards employees now get paychecks from Hasbro. And Hasbro is talking a lot more about what they're doing with Wizards and why they're doubling down on it.
Yeah, here's a fun article from Hipsters of the Coast, which is great, about how this is kind of folding together. Yeah, in a packed investor event. This will be very important for later on.
Because Hasbro's public, they have open doors where they're like, "Hi, look how great our company is," because they want people to buy their stock because that makes their stock price go up, which means that their owners and officers get more money.
Yeah. Here we go. Wizards of the Coast was brought on as a division because they had a massive 2020. You might have understood that D&D had a massive resurgence in because of 5th edition, starting when it came out in the late 2010s. But people got really into D&D during the pandemic. That I'm not telling you anything that you need to know. But look at how much money they made. $816 million in revenue last year.
2020. Yeah.
That is 23% more than 2019.
Exactly. Magic also grew, but not as much as D&D. And it was really impressive. It was close enough to they reached in 2021 being $1 billion business. They made $1 billion together, Wizards and Magic the Gathering. So A, none of us should feel bad for them. And B, it is significantly, it was earning enough. Like the thing that changed over the 22 years that Hasbro owned Wizards and just was like, do your thing, you're under our umbrella company, is that they started making a shitload of money. And so Hasbro realized that they could milk more money out of it because that's what you do as a company. Yeah.
Okay, let's go forward a year. Oh, before we move on, it's really funny when I'm reading these business articles about this because they're always like, the Providence, Rhode Island based Hasbro is dealing with the Seattle based Wizards of the Coast. I'm like, y'all are in weird places.
Yeah, Eric, do you know how when you I don't know how often you do this, but I do it a lot. When you sign up to get direct deposit from somebody, you have to give the phone number of your bank because in the past they had to be like, hello bank, I'm having trouble. Is this person there? Thank you, bank. And that doesn't happen. It's know the physical address of your bank. It's hilarious.
Oh, this is important. Also that the Wizards of the Coast doubled in size. See, when it says the company, do they mean Hasbro?
They mean Wizards of the Coast.
Oh, okay. So Wizards doubled in size in 5 years. Their profits grew 400% over the decade. Absolutely wild.
And significantly, the other half of that sentence is the then CEO of Hasbro said that Wizards was going to double again in the following 5 years. So again, from Hasbro's
it's 2023 now.
Whoa.
We're in the future.
We are in the future now.
Incredible.
So Hasbro was like, it's making more money. It's picking up steam. We think it's important. Before it was just like a whatever child that we owned. And now we're like focusing on it. And so this is important because the way Wizards wants you, well, to get into like what they want you to think about what they've been doing over the last couple of months. And the answer is no, they're trying to make as much money as possible because that's what Hasbro is saying they're doing.
Yeah, all of this is corporation motivated, which brings us to our next thing. Here's what corporations do. They buy other companies. So you might have heard of this company called D&D Beyond. You might have think this is a tool that Wizards of the Coast has created. No, this is a company that sprung up to allow you to play Dungeons and Dragons online. And Wizards of the Coast are like, I don't want a license anymore. I'm just buying you for $146 million.
Yes.
Jesus.
So companies buy other companies when they can make more money by owning them than they did by working with them in the past. So in the past, Dungeons and Dragons, Wizards of the Coast had a license with D&D Beyond to say like, hey, you can call yourself D&D, you can use our intellectual property, you can, plug in with us in all these ways in exchange for a fee. But when they realize that D&D Beyond is making more money than Wizards is making from D&D Beyond, they just buy them. And that is the strategy.
I want to highlight something really quickly. The people who made D&D Beyond was Fandom, who has all those like Wikipedia type things.
Oh, really?
And just bought, I think, Funko or something. Yeah. They just bought a lot of stuff. They have a lot of money on hand now.
I bet they do.
The rest of the company's media assets, Fandom bought D&D Beyond from a community tool called Curse, which then got absorbed into Twitch. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
My God.
This is how I do. And like when you start a company, what everyone asks you is like, oh, what's your exit plan? Like, who are you going to sell to like make a bunch of money and cash out? Which again, like it's fine to sell your company. Like that's cool. But the reason why, like, again, let's look at the numbers. Like in $1998, or I don't know what the inflation rate is, but Wizards of the Coast paid half as much as Hasbro paid for them. 20 years previous to buy D&D Beyond. You don't do a cash outlay like that unless you have a really specific reason to do it. And hey, because they're a public company and say what they want to do, we know what that is.
And you know who says what they want to do all the time? Cynthia Williams. We're going to talk about her a lot, who is currently the president of Wizards of the Coast and is a self-described big old nerd, even though she never played D&D before. And the first time she played D&D was when the CEO of Hasbro,
after she became the CEO,
Chris Cox. She's now like the CEO of Wizards. She's the president of Wizards.
She can't be a CEO because she's a president of their division, not a CEO of a company.
Anyway, we're gonna come back to her in a second.
Yeah,
things were not so rosy for Hasbro in 2022.
Yes.
So Amanda, let's talk about earnings reports. Okay, what is this newsletter? What is this news? It's not a newsletter because I'm looking at CNBC.
Yeah.
What does this mean exactly?
So when you're a public company, that means that you are listed on the stock exchange. Like imagine it as a big market where any person can go and be like, ooh, an apple, and then buy an apple. And the difference though is that you are spending money for a very, very small share of a company. And so you are a very, very small partial owner of Hasbro or GM or, Coca-Cola or whatever. And the government, because like companies could swindle and lie to you, and that's how people made money, the robber barons in like the stock market crash of the 1910s, they could just lie to you. And so because the government wants to, in theory, protect the public a little bit, they make those public companies that are listed on stock exchanges give like basically a report card to themselves 4 times a year, every quarter, and then once at the end of the year about the previous year. So the idea is like, hey, if you're going to list yourself on the stock exchange, you have to tell us about like if you're making money, who owns you, like what your directors are like, what the risks are. If I want to put my hard-earned money into a share of whatever, they need to be able to tell me, hey, like there are some risks. It's almost like on pharmaceutical commercials where they say it really fast. Only the version of this is that it's really small font in the middle of like a 100-page report, which I eat up like candy. I love them so much. And so every quarter, the company's report card is called an earnings report, where they talk about how much money they made the quarter before. And because this happens regularly, there are a bunch of experts and reporters that are like specializing in all the entertainment companies and all the oil companies or all the flight, airplane companies. And so they're experts and they can say, like Delta says they're doing okay, but that's really not true. Or Hasbro made this much, but we expected them to make this much. And so when a company does worse than experts expect them to, they miss earnings.
Analyst expectations here.
Exactly. So an analyst is like, listen, by the way things are going, if they're running their business properly, they should make this much money. And if a company beats expectations, everyone's like, woohoo. And then the stock price goes up because they're like, ooh, this is a sexy stock. I should buy it. Yeah. And if they miss expectations, the stock goes down. And so the last fucking thing a company or a corporate, employee ever wants to do is miss earnings expectations, because that means that something went wrong that the company didn't plan for, and that makes them look bad.
Yeah. Shares closed down at hitting a new 52-week low,
exactly,
which we all know is bad. This quote from Chris Cox.
Chris Cox, that's really his name.
He's having a tough time. This is going to be important later. They had a really tough 2022, but they benefited from film releases. Let's put a pin in that, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's put a pin in that. And of course, they get to blame inflation.
And so they say things like, you real people out there, you're sensitive to prices. You real people out there, you need sales to buy toys, and that's why we didn't make enough money. But they're experts. They're in the toy business. They should be able to understand that, like, people don't spend a lot of money going up to the holiday season because they're saving money for the holiday season. Like, these are things that are known that people should be able to predict. And so when the company, it's showing a big mistake when they miss earnings. And so they say all kinds of things. They can't lie, but they can misdirect. And they can say, like, as you know, inflation. But then analysts are like, inflation isn't as bad as your loss was. So, like, what's the deal?
Right. That's why everyone's blaming Joe Biden.
Exactly.
Who's not perfect, but he's not controlling the economy.
No. And so in October, I think late October, they say, like, oopsie doodle, our third quarter was not that good, my bad, and their stock started going down.
Okay. So now because of this, Bank of America decided, you're doing a bad job, and I'm going to tell people about this. I'm so glad we have you here for this, Amanda, because this is explicitly what you used to do.
Yes.
I also want to point out we've now jumped from October 2022 to November 2022.
Yes. So my guess is that after Hasbro missed their earnings target, and everyone's like, oh, and then the stock price starts going down, basically investment banks keep teams of reporters, they're called financial analysts, on staff. And they have, like I was saying earlier, a few people dedicated to oil, a few people dedicated to airlines, a few people dedicated to entertainment and media. And so those people work for an investment bank, and they publish reports for the bank itself and its employees and also its investors. If you have, you're a controller of the New Jersey Firemen's Pension Fund, you get these kinds of PDFs. That's a real thing. Don't knock pension funds. They're incredibly powerful in finance.
No, I know. It's just funny.
No, it is very funny. I'm like, oh, the teachers union is here. Excellent. Like, yeah. But they report whether basically they're saying, like, hey, if I am a customer of Bank of America and I say, oh, I want to buy some stocks, which ones are good? They're trying to tell me if it's worthwhile to buy a stock because the price of the stock is less than what it should be. People don't see that this company's going to do better in the future, they think. And so you should buy it now because it's going to grow. If you should hold, like if you own it, great. If you don't own it yet, don't get in. It's not a good deal. It's probably priced pretty close to what it should be. Therefore, it's not like a good time. It's not like on sale. It's not a good time to get it.
Just neutral.
Yeah.
Don't do anything.
Or they're going to be like,
get
out.
rid of this.
I'm out.
Get rid of this. Never buy it.
Sell. Yeah. Some places call it different things: buy, hold, sell. Bank of America has its own rating system. And so whenever a bank changes its opinion and says, listen, we used to tell you should be buying Delta, but now we think you should hold on it. Or, hey, we used to say you should hold on it or neutral on it, but now we're saying buy. It's a good time to buy. It's a big deal. And, it moves the stock market. People listen to what they say, and then the share price goes up or down accordingly. It's like news breaking, don't go to McDonald's for this reason. People stop going to McDonald's. The people who buy stocks are like scared cats or sheep in a way, and they follow what the trends are telling them. And so what's very rare, I want you to understand, is for a bank to say, we used to say you should buy it. In fact, you should sell it. They're skipping a whole step in the middle there, which is neutral. It looks bad for the bank to be like, yesterday we were telling you to buy it, today we're telling you to sell it. That's an extreme reversal, and it has real side effects for the stock market.
Yeah. So this is exactly what happened. This guy, Jason Haas, and his assistants, shouted at those assistants who definitely wrote
two women analysts who definitely actually wrote it. Yeah.
So he's focusing on like Magic the Gathering specifically. He says he might have like heard this from his like son or his son's friends or a nephew or something.
Yeah.
But he's saying that like not only is Hasbro doing badly, maybe as triggered by, remember what happened last month, the third quarter reports, but also this thing about Magic cards, they're making too many of them, which if you talk to anyone who does this, such as Misha, who plays the game like Misha Stanton, they'll tell you, yeah, fucking cards all the time.
Yeah.
They're undervaluing the whole entire premise of Magic the Gathering, of a card game.
Which is, if I understand it correctly, you got to get the cards you want because they're not going to be made forever.
Right.
Like you can't go to a vending machine and get the card you need. That's why they get expensive.
Well, it's not only for competitive reasons because it's a game, it's also for collecting reasons. So if there are too many rare cards, or you're trying to get everything, people are going to run out of money and it's not going to be fun. So now this is what this guy, Jason Haas, and his team is saying on top of some of the other stuff. This set, there's like a 30th anniversary set that's coming out that will devalue many high value cards. He thinks that like this is about the black market and stuff. It's kind of complicated, but the big deal is that a bank said, Hasbro, you're doing a bad job.
Right. Not just, hey, they're doing bad things with their Magic the Gathering asset, but they are doing such a bad job, and we are so worried about the direction they're taking that we're going from suggesting you buy the stock to suggesting you sell it. They're skipping a step. They're passing go. They're saying, get the fuck out of there because Hasbro's doing a bad job. Yeah.
My brother works in finance, and he gets the stuff from just like the, what would you call Bloomberg? Like the program?
It's like the press wire.
Yeah. He has like a business press wire, and he sent us
the
this
mainframe.
thing.
He's jacked to the mainframe.
It's really funny. Jason sent his assistants to take photos of Magic the Gathering in targets.
So again, you can
so
like,
funny.
They're basically like super accountants who are also reporters. And so when I worked in that division, I liked these people a lot because they are fucking nerds who can also write. It's really interesting.
Yeah. So we saw them go to different targets.
So
they took photos in different targets
Katie
in
and Jessica
New York.
To so Target funny. To be like, you know, because it's relevant. It's relevant. It's like, hey, if you go to a bunch of cheesecake factories all over the country, are they empty? Are they full? Like, is the food good? Like, are the employees happy? Like, all of this is really relevant. And it's relevant too to companies to say, hey, you know, major, like, Hasbro relies on retail chains like Target and local game stores to get their cards into the hands of people. And if Target is like, no one's fucking buying these things, I'm not going to stock them, that has a real impact on how many cards they can sell. But Target's not going to tell you that. PR for Target has no fucking idea / don't want to talk to you. So they send Katie and Jessica to Target.
So funny. To just taking photos of Targets in New York City.
I know.
And like there were like 12 different sets and there were a lot of them. So there were a lot of them and no one was buying them. I don't know how much I agree with like this thing, but the fact of it is a real big deal.
Yeah. The also thing to point out is like, because these reports move the stock market, banks care, like banks don't care about some things. They care fucking a lot about the conclusions they make in these reports. When I worked at JP Morgan, and there was a whole team of like there were probably a third as many like lawyers in charge of reading these reports before they go out to make sure all the things they're saying are true and provable than there are analysts. So it's not like they can just publish whatever they like. Like there is a real vetting process for these reports. So it is important, and it's a significant thing to go out there. And the headline was like, Hasbro fumbles the ball. Like it was really like, I mean, you can see
this is on Kotaku, which is a video game, outlet. Review, but like this was all over business news.
Yes.
And people didn't know what it meant, but it was still like a big
I know
deal.
what it means.
Other than Amanda.
Eric was like, oh, look, Amanda, I finished it. And then go, a double downgrade. Like I was like,
pushing people out of the way. Okay, so let's go forward.
All right, so this is November 14th. Hasbro gets embarrassed by the financial press.
Okay, now we're here on December 9th. I don't want to zoom in too much. Now we're here on December 9th. Dungeons & Dragons executives thinks the brand is really under-monetized. Jesus Christ. All right, so the reason why this happened is that there was an investor-focused web seminar, quote-unquote, a fireside chat.
So,
hold on. There was a fireside chat, which you can get on the Hasbro website. It's public. I will include the link. I'm going to put the link to all of these articles in the episode description of this thing. So you can listen to it if you want. It sucks. We also got a transcript from my brother.
Yes.
So that we can actually,
they have a worse transcript, but yeah, we got a better one.
We got it like a real transcript from like a business company that made this. Okay. So this whole web seminar was about how the Bank of America thing was wrong.
They didn't say that, but it's true.
But they were alluding like, hey, don't worry. I don't know who's saying these things. Yeah. And they basically took all the time to refute everything we just said. Yeah. That Bank of America said that like, no, we're not devaluing Magic cards. We don't care about the black market for reselling. It just doesn't really matter. Yeah. But then in the last third of the call, they started talking about Dungeons and Dragons a little bit. And that's when our ears perked up. And you'll see how this is setting the table for everything else.
Yeah. So, again, November 14th, this report comes out and people at Hasbro, like the red phone rings and they're like, oh no. And then they check their watch. They're like, okay, Thanksgiving's in 10 days, but you know what's, it's a great time for a fireside chat. Like they don't have them just for fun. They have them to refute bad PR for themselves. So this is, anyone with any kind of knowledge can tell you, like this is 100% a reply to that report being like, actually we have a lot more money we can make with these
It was
things.
Also like at an event. It was like sponsored by UBS. So it was like at a thing.
So yeah.
They're like, okay, we can't do this during Thanksgiving. We're going to do this right in the holiday season, which I think is wild.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to stop talking about the fucking gossip. This doesn't matter because we're moving into the D&D portion.
Yes.
Is that, remember Cynthia Williams from before? She said D&D has never been more popular and we have really great fans and engagement, but the brand is really under monetized. A president said you're under monetized?
Yes.
This shit is wild. They're trying to solve this corporate conundrum. Much of this relies on D&D Beyond, the company they acquired for almost $150 million last year.
Yeah.
And how it's tied into the next phase of D&D, alluding to One D&D, which is like the weird games as service edition that is going to be the future of Dungeons and Dragons. Fucking weird. This only gets weirder. Unless do you have something before we move on?
She says explicitly that you see that how right above the part that you highlighted that like they bought D&D Beyond because they want your data about what tools you use, what your notes say, what modules you use, what spells and what subclasses are interesting to you so that they can make more shit that you want to buy. And so it's not like for fun because they like ought to own the tool because it makes sense. No, they are buying it because they want user data because they don't know what we do at home, right? And they want that to like make more money for themselves.
Yeah, it gets weirder here. So it's also important to note Cynthia Williams worked at Amazon and Microsoft before this. So she's like into the money-making business and the video game business. And like, I don't think that she knows D&D that well. There's this weird thing about how like Dungeon Masters are only 20% of the D&D player base, but the one paying for everything. So like, I don't know where this came from. Yeah, your DM buys the book, shares it with all of you, and I guess there's an average 4-player table, and that's what they're worried about, and they're trying to get everyone to spend money on things, which is not how the game works.
Well, the previous CEO of Wizards of the Coast did like their first user survey ever of Magic the Gathering and D&D users, maybe 3 years ago. They like in this fireside chat, they're like, yeah, we used to have no idea who bought our products, but now we do, which like you should know who's buying your products. That's bad. But also that like, I think they probably had a very small sample size and said like, oh, there's, on average, like we surveyed 2,000 people and most of them say they have an average of like 4 players at their table and one DM. So that's how they got this number and said, if you're a DM versus a player, how much money are you spending? How many books have you bought? Like to a certain extent, that makes sense. But the dark side of it here is that they're saying that investing in digital, investing in D&D Beyond, making Dungeons and Dragons a thing you have to pay like $10 a month for instead of something you buy in a book one time.
Which they're already doing, which I want to point out, they're already doing. When D&D Beyond is separate from the books, so you don't get like a digital copy, you got to buy it on D&D Beyond as well as having the book. So they're already doing that. Yeah,
no, they are. And they explicitly, like this is the quote here, is they want to unlock the type of recurrent spending you see in digital games.
It's like Fortnite. Apparently D&D's getting a battle pass, which is wild.
Yeah. Or like I spend $5 on Pokemon Go every, like twice a year to do certain events that are paid. And that is their holy grail. That's what they want. They would rather get $5 from me once a month to have access to this service as a player than $50 from Eric, once a year or the first time he starts DMing ever. And so, again, that's not like an evil thing to want to make money from your player base, but they're explicitly saying that they're pivoting their strategy, both for Magic the Gathering and Wizards of the Coast, to do like less good stuff for the general audience. This is super true in Magic the Gathering, where they're like, yeah, some people collect stuff, but most people just play a little bit. And we want to get some money from more people than a lot of money from our dedicated fans.
Yeah, you can see how this is shifting also by trying to turn D&D into a 4-quadrant brand, similar to Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter. They just said that, hey, wasn't the good thing that happened in Q3 was those movies? Well, just like the D&D movie that's coming out in March 2023, they seem really invested in it. This also then is demonstrated that the executives view Dungeons and Dragons as like intellectual property, like Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter, a story that can be remixed and remade and have prequels and sequels, everything we're seeing in streaming and in video right now. But like, D&D is a game. It doesn't have a story. It's inherently a pastiche of like fantasy tropes, and they're not going to use the story set in the quote unquote stories in their settings. Like, this isn't going to be like, we're making the Eberron movie. That doesn't make sense because no one knows what that is outside of their core player base who's already spending money. So this is foretelling weird things to come.
Yeah, like imagine if Hasbro was like, yeah, we're gonna start the Monopoly cinematic universe. It's like, with what? Like, what? You're gonna like make the little guys into characters? Like, I don't care about them. I care about playing the game in my own house with a board set I bought once 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's really weird. This is a really good unspoken but heavily implied in the conversation was the hope that Honor Among Thieves will act as the foundation for more entertainment like Marvel. Oh, shout out to Dicebreaker. Y'all have the best. Y'all have such good analysis. Okay, so now we're going to pop. Let's fast forward and go to the end of December 2020. Wizard of the Coast has been poking around and being like, hey, do you guys like third-party content? Do you want that on D & Beyond? And everyone's like, yes. Why are you asking this? This is weird. So these rumors have been going around saying that the open gaming license is going to be changed for 5th edition and then for 1D&D going forward. The open gaming license. Listen, we're not lawyers. This has been a real opportunity for people who are lawyers or pretend to be lawyers to say some shit. So I'm going to give you the most basic understanding of this. The open gaming license was established in 2000.
Right after the acquisition.
Right after the acquisition, which allowed people to make third-party content and sell it. These are the people who make like new adventures, who come up with items, who can make new like whole homebrew classes and sell it in various places.
Like you do, for example, in No Capes. It's like, hey, if you want to use 5e as a way to power a superhero story, this is how you do it. You put a ton of time, effort, and like intellectual property into making that. And it's, referencing and compatible with Dungeons and Dragons, but you're not saying like, hey, here's my fan fiction about the D&D guy. Like it's different.
Yes, because there's no D&D guy. He doesn't exist. That's what's complicated. The thing what they do own is called the SRD. I don't remember what it stands for, but it's basically the rules. It's the rules of Dungeons and Dragons. Like theoretically, they own like the light cantrip, and the rule of what that is. Of course, this gets a little murky because it is just a pastiche of genres, so they don't own like stuff necessarily. But that's what makes this whole thing murky.
Yeah, it's almost like a patent, like a engineering company that invents like a way to distill water owns the like way that the parts should fit together. They own the idea.
Exactly.
But that's not what D&D is claiming.
No, they don't own the idea. They own the parts. They don't own you can't own the idea of filtering water, but you can own the way that this is put together, and that's like what Dungeons and Dragons is. You can't own the experience, but you can own the specific rule set that this is. Right. Okay, so this was going around. I had heard from third-party people who I'm in touch with in the D&D community that like Wizards of the Coast has reached out to them and showed them the new OGL, which we're going to call OGL 1.1 going forward. And it fucking sucked. That was great. My favorite part was the accent work. If you like that, you gotta hear the rest of party planning by joining the Patreon at patreon.com/jointhepartypod.